Thank you so much to our four speakers for coming this evening to discuss this really interesting motion of this House would make enhancing people's happiness and well-being a central priority throughout Britain today. There are a growing amount of organisations and individuals represented here today that advocate the idea that government, on the local and national level, that institutions, groups and society as a whole have the capacity to influence individuals into being happy. David Cameron has been influenced by these ideas, querying why it is that government is so obsessed with measuring GDP. What does industrial output have to do with the happiness and fulfilment of society? Why not measure general well-being instead? The government is devoting considerable time, money and energy to the happiness agenda. Against the agenda are those who think that such ideas constitute an infringement on personal liberty. They think that the happiness agenda generates meaningless jargon, that it is trivial and unfeasible. Speaking in favour of the motion, we have Alison Murdoch, who is director and founder of the Foundation for Developing Compassion and Wellbeing, which is an international education non-profit that helps people develop their capacity to be kind and wise. Alison is the author of 16 Guidelines for a Happy Life and a regular contributor to BBC Radio. We also have Mark Williamson, who is Director of Action for Happiness. He's been director since its inception in 2010. Action for Happiness aims to promote, and I quote, a fundamentally different way of life, where people care less about what they can get for themselves and more about the happiness of others. Mark has taken it from an idea on paper to a mass participation movement with tens of thousands of people involved. He's regularly on the media advocating and defending the ideas of his organisation. Against the motion, we have Eamon Butler, who is director of the Adam Smith Institute, the free market think tank. He is the author of books on many pioneering economists. He's the former vice president of the MPS, which is an international body of classical liberal economists, and he has been ranked as one of Total Politics magazine's top 50 political influences in the UK. And finally, we have Claire Fox, a libertarian writer and a prominent former member of the Revolutionary Communist Party. She is director and founder of the British think tank, the Institute of Ideas, which is designed to be a public space where ideas can be contested without constraint. Fox is regularly on the BBC, on the Moral Maze, Any Questions or Question Time. Thank you very much to our panel this evening. Thank you to those members of the audience who have donated. If you haven't donated yet, then we'd really appreciate a donation at the end. Your donation goes a long way to ensuring we can run and hold these events. In terms of the ground rules for this evening, speeches will last 10 minutes each. Once the speaker has 1 minute left, I will bang once to let them know. Once the 10 minutes is complete, I will keep on banging until they politely sit down. Thank you to those audience members who have cast a ballot. The result of this first ballot will be read out after the first set of speeches. After the announcement, there will then be an audience Q&A for about 40 minutes. The second ballot will take place after the Q&A. The side which wins the day is the side which changes the most minds from the first ballot to the second ballot. We are trending on Twitter. Hashtag Happy York at York Union.
It's always worrying when people clap before they've heard you. And I was going to start by saying that I was happy to be here, and then I was a little bit worried about whether that was a good approach. I don't want to suggest that I only started thinking about this morning, but when I was leaving London, at the tube station, a very charming tube station where they have a whiteboard and they write up quotes for the day. And today's quote said, "Knowledge is knowing that a tomato isn't a fruit, and wisdom is not putting it into a fruit salad." And what I'm going to try and do as the first speaker here is try and explore a little bit what our knowledge of happiness and well-being is, because I think unless we actually define terms, then it's going to be very difficult to have a debate. And then I'm going to leave the others to create a fruit salad for you. That sounds all right. So I've been involved with Buddhism for over 25 years, where there is a very, very strong emphasis on first-person experience. I'm not going to give you very long. And now what I'd like you to do is put your hand right up if you had a strong experience, your hand half up if you had a medium experience, and keep your hand down if you didn't actually manage to connect with a moment of happiness and well-being. Is that okay? Great. Super. Lots of positive stuff going here. Second question. Can you connect with a moment where you didn't experience happiness and well-being? One of those down moments, one of those miserable moments. Again, take a moment to think about it. Hand right up if you had a strong experience, half up if you had a medium experience, and don't put your hand up if you didn't connect with a moment of unhappiness. Right. Okay. Thank you very much. I mean, that's just to give us a taste, to remind us of our own experience, but it can also be interesting that I don't think it's as weighted here, but probably slightly, that it's easier sometimes for us to connect with a moment of unhappiness than with a moment of happiness. I think we sell ourselves short in this whole area quite often. So I'm proposing that we want to avoid that bad feeling, that one that I quickly took you back into. If we're unhappy about our bodies, about our families, about our relationships, very much our relationships, our sex lives, or whatever it is, it's really hard to function. Certainly that's my experience, I don't know if it's yours. It's almost like a hangover that actually won't go away when you're really upset, bothered and miserable about something. And I mean, I used to be very good at covering up the fact that I had a hangover, maybe you are as well, but it was still there, and I still knew it was there. So I'm proposing that when we don't experience happiness and when we don't experience well-being, it's actually having an effect on everything that we do, a pervasive effect. And my number one teacher, the Dalai Lama, would actually go as far as saying the entire purpose of life is to be happy. And that drives, either consciously or subconsciously, absolutely everything that we do. And the difference is whether we adopt skillful methods to be happy or unskillful methods, whether they work or whether they don't work. And over the years, I've found that quite a useful way of thinking about things, because when I think about people who really bother me, you know, who I really don't feel close to, whether it's Simon Cowell, Jimmy Savile, or Assad, you know, whoever it is, at least I can say, well, they are trying to be happy, but actually they're just going about it in a really unskillful way. And the usual way that we tend to be happy tends to be through external means. You know, if I'm feeling a bit down, I'll think, oh, I might buy that chocolate brownie. I'll listen to that piece of music. I might go shopping. I'll ring up my friends and go out with my friends. I don't know if that sounds familiar to you. Might go on holiday. Maybe I'll get married. Maybe I'll go on honeymoon. Maybe I'll have children. You know, and I think quite often, all the way through our lives, there is this drive to try and find that happiness and that well-being. And the problem is that when you make your happiness dependent on external things, it's unstable. And it often tends to be short-lived. In fact, what it tends to do is just create a habit of desiring more and more things. And we see that all around us in society. And we can look at our own experience on that as well. You know, for how long did eating a chocolate brownie make me happy? Have you ever done an experiment of taking a piece of food you like and saying, all right, I'll really watch what experience this is giving me. I really watch how much I'm enjoying it. First mouthful, yes. Second mouthful, probably. I'd challenge you to see how many mouthfuls you can really stay focused on whatever it was you thought was going to sort that situation out. And then, of course, there's all the issues about wealth and happiness. Dalai Lama talks about staying with some very, very wealthy people, and everything on the surface is absolutely fine, everything's going brilliantly. But he said when he went to the bathroom and had a look inside the medicine cabinet, it was full of antidepressants. So what I'm positing is that happiness is very largely an internal thing. And I think this is a message of great hope and encouragement, because it means that we all have the resources to actually develop our own happiness, to progress it, and to take responsibility for doing that. And if anyone here has been involved in studying neuroscience, they'll know that there's enormous kind of strides happening in the last 10 years in this area, that we can literally rewire our brains. You know, we used to think that the brain was effectively created in the first 5 or so years of our life, and now we know that we're creating new brain cells right up until the day that we die. There's some fantastic research on this by people like Richard Davidson in America and people over in Europe and stuff as well. And there's a lot of study going on into the subject. Sonia Lyubomirsky is one big name. She's got you go on a website like Greater Good from the Berkeley in the States, a whole mass of different techniques and things that you can do immediately and also over many years with time to actually develop your own happiness and help people around you to be happy as well. And people like Robert Emmons, who's been doing work on gratitude, and Fred Luskin on forgiveness. There's a whole load of stuff out there. So it's the principle that our minds are like gardens, and it depends what we sow in them, it depends how we water them, how much sun we let onto them, and things like that. Mark was telling me on the way here about an event that Action for Happiness led with a monk called Matthew Ricard, and he was asked, when were you last angry? And apparently he scratched his head and he said, well, maybe it was 1982. And this is a man who's engaged with a lot of mind training techniques, including a lot of meditation, and it's obviously had an effect. And I don't know about you, but if I wasn't angry, then actually I think I would have a much higher level of happiness and well-being. But of course it's not as simple as this. It's not just about us and our interior worlds, because there's also the issue of a conducive personal environment. I don't know if anybody here reads The Week, but I got my latest version of The Week a couple of days ago, and this morning I opened it up, and the article at the back, incredibly moving article, was by someone whose mother, whose father, had actually had incredible dementia, and eventually died of that dementia. And I was in tears. It was such a moving article. If you have a chance to look at it, I'd really recommend it. And last year, my mother had motor neuron disease, and I was with her literally as she died, but also in the months ahead of that. That is clearly, we're not talking about happiness every minute. This is clearly, the warp and weft of life's experiences, where some of these things, like gratitude, like kindness and stuff, will make a huge difference. The family really bonded together. There were lots of mitigating circumstances, but nevertheless, there's moments where life is going in a different direction. And the other thing I've talked about is the political environment. That can have an enormous effect on where people are at. People obviously need Maslow's hierarchy, a basic level of, say, or spiral dynamics, if you're into that, a basic level of shelter and food, and things like that, before they can really get into this stuff. And I think we've all got our personal list, I'm sure the politics students, of things that would actually make a difference to people's happiness. Student debt, for example. Bedroom tax. Think of the people who are really affected by that and suffering from that and losing their housing at the moment. Or I've got a local example, which is our post office, which is about to be closed down, and sort of means people with benefits can't get there. So no doubt for me about the importance of happiness and well-being, and no doubt about the fact that we're all interconnected. And I think that's where the challenge comes and the responsibility. I don't know whether you're thinking of being teachers or politicians, of running merchant banks or nail parlours, but whatever you're going to do, you have incredible scope to influence other people's happiness. And the more we can all do that, the more we're also going to find happiness for ourselves. Thank you very much.